More light, actually, as well.
You want the lights higher?
A little bit more, yes.
In the room?
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. You've been good enough to get here on time, so I think we should honour your commitment by beginning. Not least because, as you can see, we have 7 panellists here from all corners of the globe with very different perspectives on this enormous challenge. And there it is up there. And I've just underlined to them, there are 3 critical words in that title: creating livable and sustainable societies. And obviously that goes beyond just transportation. I'd like to feel that you can be part of this discussion as well. But I work in television, and the aim is to get as many ideas out in a program as we can without drilling too far down. Otherwise we get stuck in the undergrowth. And with 7 panelists and many of you, that means I'm going to be pretty firm and robust on how long people are going to speak for. And the panelists have been told it's 4 minutes, which is 3 + 1, not 4 + 4. So I will make sure there's a rod of iron here. Sustainability, obviously well understood, but in many ways still very elusive. Achieving the right balance between social, environmental and economic objectives. Livability, a broader concept. Embracing factors that directly impact on individuals' lives. Access to good jobs, affordable housing, quality schools and safe streets. Everyone will have their own definition of what livability is. But I think the concept and the principle is pretty clear to all of us. Whether you are in Liechtenstein, or you're in India, or you're in China, how attractive, how bearable is the environment in which you're both living and working, and therefore moving around using whatever transport is available. I have made very clear to the panelists, we're looking for innovation. We're looking to go over the horizon. Innovations involving potentially new partnerships and collaboration. I'm not going to ask them to introduce themselves. I'm not going to introduce them in great detail. You've all got the biographies. We've got plenty to do in the next 85 minutes. So without any further ado, I'd like you to feel that you are part of this. And one of the ways I'm going to do that is after 1 or 2 of the interventions from here, I will turn to the floor and say, does anyone want to come in immediately to pick up on points? And I'm inviting the panelists, even if they haven't spoken with their predetermined thoughts, to intervene as well. So it's that kind of conversation which we'd like to have between now and 4:15. So let me move now and make that contrast between India and Liechtenstein and go to BK Chaturvedi, who's from the Planning Commission. We've been on this platform before, but things are moving very fast. Creating livable and sustainable societies from the Indian perspective, the challenge and how you resolve this extraordinary challenge of the enormity of what is your country is facing and the skills and capacity to somehow mitigate it.
Well, the major challenge in the Indian context is...
it's working.
In the context is the capacity development, and particularly in the rural areas, we have 1.5 million habitations, about 100 population and above. We have only around 70 to 80% connected. So the major challenge is connecting them, and public investments in that, public policies in that, first of all, have to come. This has to be supported simultaneously with private investment. So we have a public-private partnership program and a program for rural roads. This program has to be supported since this is a road. These are not economically viable, with a viability gap funding program where we provide subsidies up to 20% to 30%, or in fact, in the road sector up to 40%, so that the whole thing becomes viable and it starts well. A second important context in context of livability is that we must be able to connect some of the completely unconnected areas. So the tribal areas, the areas in the hill regions where there is neither road connectivity nor rail connectivity, that public investments again. So public policies, first of all, have to change, number 1. Number 2, the public transport system as such, even in the urban areas, it has very low capacity, completely inadequate capacity. So that itself has to change and to expand both in road and rail. So for that, we are for all forms of expansions in the rail expansion of undergrounds, expansion of the BRT corridors, various forms of expansion in the urban areas we feel are required so that we are able to meet the demand, the growing demand of the population. Well, third, we feel that in case this is to succeed, we have to bring in the workplaces and the living places closer together. So urban planning, and some of this urban planning has to be innovative. What we did in Mumbai, going through the Sea Link, what we are doing in some of the other towns, developing neighboring centers which are self-sufficient in themselves. Some innovative urban planning will have to be done so that we bring them together. The sustainability part will have to come from these modes being from clean energy. So a promotion of all forms of cleaner energy, particularly electric cars. There's a need for electric buses. We have an investment program in electric cars for development, need for developing the better quality of fuel. So we have a massive program of compressed natural gas buses in Delhi and in around 35 odd towns for this thing to make it completely sustainable. And finally, the need for having a better public policy on regulating use of cars. As of now, the emphasis on cars, this is a great vested interest, and gradually we must have more regulatory and financial structures to control the usage of cars and the usage of limited road surface for the purpose of the large population which needs more. I think these are measures by which we can improve the livability and sustainability of societies in India.
BK, before I go though to hear the Liechtenstein challenge with a minute population compared to you, I've got to press you on this because you say has to change. There's got to be some innovative planning. I'd put to you that India faces such an enormous disconnect between the vast numbers who are expecting better facilities, particularly in the cities, up to 500 million in the urban environment soon. And they're expecting it soon. Do you have the capacity and the skills to make what you say should happen?
Well, exactly. The private investment is going up in India. It used to be around 1.3% in 2003-04. It has gone to around 4% in 10-11, and we expect it that it'll go up further. So the private investment actually is driving.
That's money. What about human capital, human skills to do this?
Oh, well, human skills. We had a limitation because we didn't really start this program initially. But gradually we are developing it, and I do hope that over the next few years we would be able to develop, because India has a large human capital, a massive program for skill development, and gradually we are now identifying the gaps in skills. And that is has to be undertaken for development.
All right, that massive contrast. The Deputy Prime Minister of Liechtenstein, you're also responsible for roads here. Tell us what. We can't imagine there being major challenges of livability and sustainability in Liechtenstein. So what's the reality?
Well, thank you, Nick. Also, Liechtenstein, as a small state within Europe, has some big challenges to manage. We heard yesterday and today some problems. Also, I want to mention this special situation in Liechtenstein. Liechtenstein is an international economic area with a big industries. And we have the special situation that we have 36,000 inhabitants and that we also have 36,000 places to work. And that means half of the people every day are commuters which are coming to Liechtenstein and which they travel to Liechtenstein. And this is for our small country, and we are within the Alps. We have 60% of our country is a mountain area. So we have a big challenge to control this traffic which is coming in the morning hours to Liechtenstein and which leaves in the evening hours Liechtenstein. Then you have to know, like in every other society, we have the individual behavior. Everyone wants to have mobility in labor time, in leisure time, also in work time. And we have a third challenge. Liechtenstein is a car country. Almost every inhabitant has one or two cars. So And if we look to the future, to the year 2020 or 2040, we expect 60,000 inhabitants in Liechtenstein, and that means we have to change the transport system in Liechtenstein, and we have to change the behavior of our society. Now, what is the solution? The Liechtenstein government decided a political agenda 2020. The political agenda 2020 is a master plan which has focused on sustainable mobility, on sustainable transport and other political areas. For the transport, our ideas are to strengthen the public transport system. We are implementing right now an urban railway system, which we don't know in our region. We combine it with a bus system. A second part is that we do a strong cooperation with our neighbor countries, with Switzerland, with Austria, and also with the southern parts of Germany. We implement also some soft factors. We support cycling roads, special roads, and other things. And the most important thing, and I heard this in a panel here yesterday, we combine the transport development with the urban planning system. We are building sustainable cultures. Yesterday we were talking here an example about New York glass streets. They are rebuilding their streets in New York, and that's exactly the same process we are implementing in a small country in Liechtenstein. So the sustainable transport is combined with the whole politics field of health and environment, and we also for sure we are looking for good conditions for older and handicapped people so that we reach the second global goal we are discussing today.
Thank you. Who'd like to come in? There are microphones here. Again, don't sit on your hands and tell me I didn't come to you, because if anyone would like to come in on both the Indian and the Liechtenstein experience, given that they are at either end of the spectrum here. Does anyone want to come in at the moment? Please, microphone here. And while the microphone gets there, let me just ask you, Deputy Prime Minister, do you feel the livability of Liechtenstein is under threat at the moment?
Well, we are looking forward. Sure, sometimes our people they feel threats because today we have 36,000 inhabitants in Liechtenstein. In 15 years we will have 60,000 people, and this is for a small state within Europe a really a big change. Big challenge. We have to manage the transformation process of our industry and of our people's behavior.
Please.
Yes. Baron Ensing, Secretary General of the European Cyclists Federation. I heard the word cycling in the Liechtenstein story. I was astonished that I did not hear the importance of bicycles for India. In any case, to get more mobility and access to mobility for people in India, I cannot imagine that you can solve for this millions of people by e-cars. Why do you not talk about more on cycling and maybe on electric assisted cyclists?
Right. There are plenty of people who do ride bicycles in India.
No, absolutely. The question is that one has to start with priorities. As of now, we were mentioning about the massive gap for the large rural areas and the large population which doesn't have access. So first of all, we must have access. Second, as for bicycles, absolutely true that this is in the urban areas. As urban societies go, there is a need for change in public priorities, and this has to be an important component of the urban planning part.
Would any of you like to come in on the panel after what you've heard about India and Liechtenstein? Okay, well, let's move on with Henry Leave, if we can, to China. I hope you have a microphone there. You are, after all, involved in making a big leap of technology in the BYD company. But let me quote to you a paper for this forum, Implementing Sustainable Urban Travel Policies in China, from Hao Chaopan at Tongji University, who says right at the beginning of his summary, people have gradually realized in China that we cannot sustain endless motorization.
So first of all, people need mobility, that's for sure, and increasingly need, you cannot stop that. So from policy point of view, from industry point of view, you have to support these needs, have to provide more and more mobility for people and in a sustainable way. So in our view, and from the enterprise and from the government point of view, we strongly believe now that go electric is the quickest and short-term or even mid-term target. And today, in China, they already set as 7 emerging new industry areas, including electric mobility. This is one of the top issues on the agenda. And in practice, we will choose to first focus on the public transportation sector, especially from the electric buses and electric taxis. So because if you consider the pollution and emission, CO2 emission, each bus is equivalent to about 30 private cars in terms of emission. And one taxi is equivalent to 10 private cars in terms of mileage and emission. So we urgently need to electrify these two sectors. There's a simple calculation that in China there are roughly 500,000 taxis and 500,000 buses and 1.2 million taxis on the road. So if you can electrify all these vehicles, that these representing about 2.6% of the total bus also these private cars, but the reduction equivalent to 41% of the car park today. So this effect is enormous, and the subsidy, the efficiency of the subsidy from government is very high compared to subsidize the private car sectors. But of course, for incentive for private electric mobility is important, but we first should focus on the electric buses and electric taxis sectors.
But Henry Lee, when you look at those words, livable and sustainable, given the level of congestion, and this is recognized in the current 5-year plan, and it's recognized right at the heart of the leadership in these enormous megacities which are emerging so quickly at an amazing rate, this issue of congestion, whether it's an electric car or whether it's driven by fossil fuels, and we'll hear about that in a moment from Shell, this issue of how you make it a livable and sustainable society together.
Yeah. Okay. From a livable point of view, because the bus and taxis that exist and numbers are increasing. So what the first impact to the civilians is the pollution, is the first thing they feel every day, and the air they breathe every day. And CO2 is a long-term impact. But today, we are facing is the most serious problems in Beijing, Shanghai, big cities are air pollution. So this, from livable point of view, I think to electrify buses and taxis especially, these vehicles are running in city centers and very densely populated areas. So to electrify all this, you can remove the direct pollution, NOx, and heat emissions, noises. You can eliminate those, so people can feel directly the improvement of the air quality. So it's to help the livable and sustainable. Of course, you consume much less energy, because you normally charge the vehicles during the night, use the very low-cost electricity, and during the day. So reduce the cost, the use of the fossil fuels.
Thank you. Matthias, would you like to come in now? The view from the Federation of the German Automotive Industry, picking up on what you've just heard already and making your own points as well.
I just want to say that I appreciate a lot what BYD is doing, and I share your view about the development of alternative propulsion besides the traditional engine, which we in Europe also do. We do a 2-track concept. But one thing I think is clear, the electric concept has to be seen with its full scale. That means including the energy which comes to the car. So the question at the end for the energy and CO2 concept is, from where is the energy coming? If, for example, the energy is mainly driven by coal and by coal produced in an old manner, it's not sure that in the medium range electric vehicle is CO2-wise better than, for example, an advanced diesel. I'm sure you have that in mind, but we also, in a discussion like this, we have to be very clear. We want the electric vehicle, we want the alternative propulsion in many areas, but the question how much that can contribute to the world's climate change challenge depends a lot from the energy which in a country is used for the battery and for the electric vehicle. So we have to have that in mind. Therefore, in Germany, for example, we say we develop the electric vehicle. We have clear figures in mind, 1 million 2020, between 3 and 4 million 2030. But we know that it will only contribute to the CO2 challenge if the energy is coming from renewable energy schemes and not from elsewhere.
When you, though, look, and let me just pick up, because you've picked up on Henry Lee, but on a broader front, I assume you've just made the kind of remarks you were planning to make. But again, thinking over the horizon, the enormity of the pressure now on cities, particularly in the developing world at this moment, the numbers are really quite staggering, as confirmed by many of the papers before this forum. Is it about changing the use and the patterns of usage of so many things to make this livable society? And that's what we're being asked to think about this afternoon.
Yeah, sure. We have to, in the old days, there were the car people and the railway people and the bicycle people, and more or less all of them were in a deep struggle. In the world of today, we have to understand that each of these transport modes will only contribute to a livable and sustainable society if it uses all of these concepts for a more developed mobility chain and with the best logistics. That means we, the car people, need the railway systems and we need more bicycles in the urban areas, because we have to accept that the car alone cannot solve the problems of the future. And also the railway people have to understand that you cannot put a railway track in front of every house to get the freight to the house. You need the lorry. And I think this modern thinking, which more thinks in how can we overcome the separations between the different modes, is absolutely needed. And where it works, it really contributes.
We'll hear from Robin Chase shortly about one idea which is emerging very quickly for change of usage and how people want to get around with Buzzcar. But let's go to Peter Voser now, Chief Executive of Royal Dutch Shell. You've heard the view on the electric car. We heard it on this platform exactly a year ago, so not a lot has changed. And again, that argument about where's the electricity going to come from. Peter Voser, your view from The Hague.
Yeah, thank you. I think I do agree that we need all the forms of transport, and we need them all together, being it either electricity, being it biofuels, etc., etc. Well, let me make first one clear statement. What we really need is actually, and you touched on it, we need what we call the well-to-wheel standards. So we need to look at the full chain, what that actually means, and then pick the right energy source for the right usage. So I think that's the first one, and I haven't seen this really coming up. We did recently a study of 20 megacities in the world at Shell, and we have, for example, found that US cities, the way they are actually constructed, they need 3 times more energy than a European city. So I think the second message, which I think we need to tackle early, which I think goes back to you as well, is the way we design cities. We are clearly, in the US, we are adding to cities that's sprawling out. Where we have the chance to build new cities or new megacities, we should actually really go after it in an energy inclusive concept. Otherwise, we will end up exactly in the same, that we use too much because we are building it in the wrong way. And let's face it, we have 50% urbanization today. It will be 75% by 2050. We will add 1 new city of 1 million people every week from now until 2050, or 4 Londons a year, or 3 Sao Paulos a year. And this needs to be managed. And then we can design the energy to that. So that's the first one. On the fuel side, Clearly, we are working on solutions up to 2030, but we need also solutions post 2030, because we cannot change everything from today to tomorrow. So I think we need to concentrate on those things which we can influence. One is energy efficiency, which goes also back, I think, to some of the comments. We can save a lot, actually, on the energy efficiency side, not just on the transport system. We could also do it the way we build houses, etc. But I think that needs political will. Someone needs to stand up and implement that. If we don't do that, we will unfortunately not save it. We made a lot of savings on the energy side on the car industry for the last 20, 30 years. We all gave it away for all what we know. We want more horsepower, we want bigger cars, we want all of this. This can be addressed and needs to be addressed. Now, I think biofuels, we see, has sustainability issues. We know that. We are working on that. But it's the one solution which, apart from electromobility, can be actually done now. Sugar ethanol in Brazil, which is 20% of the ethanol, which is, or the fuel which is used in Brazil, has 70 to 90% less CO2. That's a solution which is available. Big issue here in Germany, why we can't use E10, whilst the Brazilians use actually E20. Now, this is all manageable, but what it needs, which is my point as well, it needs the industry, it needs the government, and it needs other stakeholders to work together. If we don't work for common integrated solutions between the various industries and the various governments, we will not get there. Let me say a word about gas. Gas in transport. Yes, it is a fossil fuel. I know that. But it's the lowest burning fuel, and it's the solution which is also available. We have 250 years of reserves today against today's demand of gas reserves in the world. So liquefied natural gas in cars, mainly in trucks and ships, or compressed gas, can be made available within the next 20 years, or now for the next 20, 30 years, and can then be replaced by new forms of technologies afterwards. So I think my point again is, let's use what we have today, let's develop it, and at the same time give innovation the time to develop the 2030 to 2050 picture.
Thank you. Anyone like to come in, please? 2 or 3. Can you just get microphones to those in the audience? You say, how do we design cities? It's a chance to build cities. Let me put to you, the way conurbations, urbanization is developing in most places, it's just happening. The volume, the speed, particularly in the developing world. When you look at places like Mumbai, you look at places across the developing world, there is no chance, there's no time and chance to plan. It's happening. Do you have an answer to that?
Yeah, I can see that we have some mega cities today which are growing, and that's more difficult. But I have to say we are seeing a lot of smaller, medium-sized cities now being either constructed or they are growing, and I think there it's early enough to intervene. We are doing a study in China with some of the think tanks in China on actually how an energy system can be offered to actually provide an efficient energy system into a new growing megacity. And I think we are at the dangerous point of not thinking about those things because we, like you say, we think it's not solvable because we have the problem already. But the problem will be much bigger if we wait, because a lot of new cities, in China, for example, I mean, there is so much going on there. India must have the same. You have got every new cities forming out of villages, the sum of smaller cities. That's where we still can work. And I think companies like ours, there are other industries. The Germans have a few important industries. If we work together, I think together with Indian and Chinese companies, this can be actually tackled up front.
And again, you talked about political will. Were you hinting there that you're worried that there isn't a sufficiently smart mindset in many governments, whether at the local, state or national level, to understand the enormity of what's coming down the track?
Yeah, 2 comments here. One is a dangerous one, but the time horizon we need in terms of thinking is 40, 50 years. That doesn't always match the political time horizon. So that's one comment.
Is that a serious limitation in your view?
It is a limitation, yes. It is. And you see it in many discussions which become very emotional because you get too close to elections, to get too close to certain events. So I think that is clearly one. But I think the other one is also that governments tend to pick the losers and the winners today. Now, in terms of technologies, what I think we need to be careful is actually that the innovation and the technology drive can still develop the right technologies in the longer terms. So you don't need to give us, the industries, that this technology will be the winner. Let us actually, through a framework, well-to-wheel, for example, then develop those who will deliver that energy system. And I guarantee you, the industries have always grown into that. At the moment, we are putting decisions on certain winners, which are technology-wise not yet ready, are too expensive and will not deliver the necessary outcome.
BK, just before I go to the audience, from your position in the Indian Planning Commission, given the enormity of what you face on so many different levels, not just transport, but right across the whole kind of social structure of your country, both at the federal level and the individual state level, do you sense among the political class a sense almost of exasperation, potential despair about the scale of what has to be done in such a short time to create livable and sustainable societies?
Well, I think that increasingly the entire political spectrum, whether it is of A party or B party, is realizing that this is a challenge which has to be met. And therefore, as we discuss in the Planning Commission with the chief ministers of the states, their challenges, we find them extremely conscious of these challenges, and they're trying to address it. If you talk to Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh, of Maharashtra, about Mumbai and how they're trying to challenge it, what investments are required, you will find them absolutely first rate in these. And similarly, at Delhi, if you see the new plan that we are making in the 12th five-year plan, this is a major challenge. That how do we meet the challenge of 50% population getting urbanized in the next 30 years? And this is one of the, if you find the challenges, it's a very major issue for us.
Well, picking up Peter's point, I just happened to have shared the car from there to here with the Transport Minister for Delhi, who talked about it being relatively straightforward to manage creating sustainable and livable Delhi alongside UP and Haryana, because they're all the same party at the moment. But in India, when it's not the same party, that gets much more complicated. Correct?
I'm afraid on these questions, it is not so much. You talk to the Chief Minister of Gujarat, the Chief Minister of... On these developmental questions, private investments, energy efficiency, urban development, they're all the same. They may have their own agenda on other matters, on how to win the elections. But on these developmental questions, I find they're all on the same page they are reading.
Wow.
Private investments, handling urban development, handling the poor. Because if they don't, they're not going to win the elections.
Please do come in if you'd like to on this, but I know there are 3 or 4 people. Who's got the microphone? Here and at the back. Please, you've got the microphone, and I'll come further back as well. Please, and introduce yourselves, will you?
Thank you. My name is Åsa Wagland. I'm from the Swedish Agency for Innovation Systems. I have a question for Mr. Henry Lee. You were talking about electric cars. Could be one of the solutions, but it will still not solve the problem with space, both roads, motorways, but also parking. And there are very many kilotons for transporting one person if you will have one car for every person when you travel. My question is, have you thought about more like Tata in India, more like semi-vehicles, e-bikes, e-scooters, alternative, smaller cars or whatever vehicles you could say. Is that something that is possible to sell in China, or is it a difference in traditions or something between China and India? That's my question.
Okay,
Thank you.
And could you move the microphone further back as well, please?
Actually, China, I think, is famous for bicycle, as a kingdom of bicycle in the past. But today, because of in mega cities, it's difficult to really ride a bicycle across the city. It takes hours. And then, but today, China still have the biggest electric bike population. Every year, there's more than 20 million units of electric bicycles on the road. So actually, people get used to using more and more electric bicycles, and at the same time, they still cannot meet the demand. So our focus to convert currently the busiest system is the bus transport system, city bus, into electric. That's the urgent task we are handling now.
But the question is also about the level, the design and the principles. It's interesting what's happened to the Nano in India.
Yeah.
It hasn't taken off in the way that people expected.
But I think the efficiency is much more than any passenger cars. We just try to reduce the passenger cars, not reduce, but restrict, but increase the number of buses and taxis and on the road. This is public transport sector.
So you're talking about changing the mentality of usage, are you?
Yes, and actually in Shanghai, the number plate for private car has been controlled many years, and Beijing starting now to control the people, to limit the people to have access to buy a car, and they also limit the use of the cars. You have a single day, you can use only every other day your car. So that's the limitations. But
do people buy two cars then?
Yes, that means you have to buy two cars and need more parking space. So there's a difficult problem to solve. But people really need the transportation, not only the public but private.
But let me try and ask that question in a different way. What car do you think people should have in China?
People like big cars. And sometimes expensive cars.
That's not my question. What do you think they should have? Can you design something which you believe China Chinese people would like, which is both livable and sustainable and achieves what they want?
Electric bicycle, electric scooters could be a good solution, but for different people, you need to have different solutions. So there's no one solution for everybody. And the car we cannot think much better system than public, like buses and metro. That's the best of the best.
All right. Who's got the microphone there? I will try and get as many questions in. And Jan and Robin, I haven't forgotten you, but I just want to keep this momentum going, please.
Yes, I'd like to, Jim Seal, transportation consultant in the United States. I want to raise this challenge for the livable and sustainable cities in the developed countries, just in that point. What measures, I think we need to develop measures to show whether or not we have these livable communities. And more important than that, I think one of those measures ought to be, can these communities create jobs? Because could we not design a perfect livable city as a bubble where people go outside in the periphery, in the exurbs, suburbs, and create far more jobs, yet we still can show we have a livable city somewhere else? In other words, how does that livable city grow and attract those looking for employment?
You're asking for metrics of some kind, are you?
I'm asking for metrics, and I'm asking also, we can't take the livable city in isolation from everything else that's occurring. And that is, number one, a increasing population and the demand for jobs. How do you solve all that?
Does anyone in this room have a new system of metrics for measuring this? Not yet. Who'd like to come in on this, on the metrics? Peter.
I think you're going in the right direction for the urbanization problem. It's not just the transport system, but it's the industry development, it's the concentration of certain industries in certain cities, in certain areas, etc., which then creates the jobs, etc. So I think you see in some parts of the world where this is now being studied and how this can be done. You even in your own country, if I understood you are from the States, if you look at certain areas in Texas, they're going into that direction, which I think are good starts. I'm not aware of any measures, but I think the concept is becoming clearer that you need to take the integrated view, which is not only transport and energy, but it is the job and the industrialization of it, including education, which you haven't mentioned, but that's part of it. You need the universities, you need the education systems in the right way. So I think there are good examples around. in the world which we can use and learn from it. But I haven't come across a measurement system for that.
BK, do you have any clear metrics in the Planning Commission? You're meant to know everything in the Planning Commission in India.
Well, as far as this planning is concerned, where we have found it extremely difficult, we can have a few cities, because the question is that today, with different people working in the families, the husband working, the wife working, the children working, quite often they stay together. It is very difficult to say that we would be able to find a matrix where we are going into self-sustaining societies in respect of jobs, in respect of livings altogether. It is, I feel, a difficult process. But what is feasible is to devise residences around some of the major job centers. We have done it in respect of certain industries where there are self-sufficient societies, power plants, many industries. Those are self-sufficient societies. That's possible for us to have.
All right. Anyone else want to come in? And I'll get two more questions, and then we'll move on to Robin and Jan. You've got the microphone. Who's further back there? I'll come to you in a moment. The lady at the front.
Luann Hammond, drivingthenation.com. Henry, a couple of years ago, you were there, and I interviewed your CEO and David Sokol, Warren Buffett's used to be right-hand guy. It was apparent then that part of the reason Warren Buffett bought 10% of your company was not just for the electric car, but because you were working on electric storage, so that you could store electricity that was free and then use it during the peak hours. How is that going?
Thank you. You raised a good points. Actually, we not only concentrate on the transport itself, we think out of the box. Actually, in BYD, we have three green dreams. One is to make affordable solar power generation. Second is massive use of power storage system. And third is to have the commercialized electric vehicles, electric transportation. So in this way, we can create really a green energy train from generation, storage to the end users. Think about in China, we just use 4% of our desert. We can create the energy enough for the whole country. So we believe the solar power is the future. Then that could also answer part of your questions regarding the CO2 emission from electric cars. If you talk about the dirtiest way of producing the electricity is the coal electricity production. I think we have the rough calculation that even with that power source, it's still cleaner than most of the combustion engines.
Thank you. One more at the back, and then we'll move on to Robin and Jan.
I'm Peter Brown from Houston, Texas. And by the way, I wanted to say in the terms of metrics, OECD has just come out with this new effort to, I think they call it a livability index. In other words, it's not just the GDP going up, which was the former index. It's a new thing, livability index. So that might be helpful. That's what you're talking about. But what I wanted to say, I'm hearing a disconnect between livable and sustainable. For example, the electric car, that's sustainable, definitely. But that's not going to have much of an effect on a more salutary urban pattern that comes from the word livable. So it occurs to me that, for instance, the Netherlands, I'm sorry to pick on you, Mr. Bozer, but that's a very good model, because part of what I'm hearing from a lot of these conferences is there needs to be an intervention. And we probably don't want a government intervention purely of that nature. What has the Netherlands done? You've got livable cities, you've got livable villages, you've got bicycles, you've got multimodal transit, you've got the whole 9 yards. Is that a good model for the rest of society?
And should I perhaps ask you before you sit down, do you think Houston is livable and sustainable?
Well, I'm going to talk about that tomorrow, but
well, give us a quick heads up.
We have a new mayor, and we're working on it. Let me tell you that. We've got a long way to go.
But in a metric of, let's say 10, where would you put Houston on livable and sustainable?
Let me put it this way. We have the highest vehicle miles traveled of any city in the country. We have a lot of problems, but we're starting with light rail, a new light rail system, 30 miles, and we're moving forward very slowly.
And livable.
And we have a livable neighborhoods program. I don't want to get into the details.
All right,
of that,
we'll hear about it tomorrow.
Livable neighborhoods is what is a fundamental principle I think we need to go with.
Peter Vosa, then I'll come to Robin and Jan. Do you want to? Was it specifically to Peter that question? About the Netherlands. That's why.
Switzerland, Finland, Netherlands, they've got their act together. It all seems to work. Maybe you're going to tell me I'm wrong.
I cannot talk about Finland, but certainly living in Holland and being Swiss, I can most probably talk about the two countries. So
that's why the question's to you.
Yes, but I think the key here is the long-term, clear plan and framework to develop things and actually stick to it. I think in Switzerland, you have since the 50s, you have got the same type of government who takes a rather long-term view in most kind of decisions with a straight and direct control by the population. And I think that gives you quite a bit of attention and a discussion in the system. So I think it goes back to what I said earlier. This is about long-term. This is not about the next 4 years. And I think that's where you can win a lot. And it needs the political, like also the society will, to stand up and say certain things will be more expensive. Certain things I have to give up. I mean, I hear the discussion about what China can do, which car they want. I think I would turn the question around, is what are we prepared to give up in terms of size of cars, etc.? Because we need to make space that the billions of people who are coming in the developed, in the emerging world, that they can actually also enjoy to have a fridge at home and have a car, etc. So I think this discussion is, for me, many times a little bit too much focused on what the developing world should do now in order to actually not generate a problem for the world. But I think we should start at home, and I'm European, so I say this, we should start at home to think first.
Matthias, the question which went to Henry, the first one, about what car should be built as opposed to what people want. Those you represent in the German automotive industry, can you feel a shift going on? In other words, not necessarily the big car that Henry says the Chinese would love, but the car people ought to be driving to make this livable and sustainable society. You need the mic.
Yes, we have in the car sector more or less 10 segments, from the smallest one to the SUV. And I think the challenge is to get in each segment the consumption and the CO2 emissions further on dramatically down. And what I see, for example, now in Europe, and for example in the industry which I represent, that we now for 4 consecutive years got our CO2 emissions for the newly produced cars in each segment with an average down this year of 4%, last year of 3%. And we have now, for example, 300 cars on the market with CO2 emissions below 130, which is 5 liter and less. And we think that only the traditional engines will get down further on till 2020 by some 20 to 25%. And the goal is clear. The goal is to get as near as possible to a kind of zero-emission car, either with the traditional or with the alternative or with combined concepts.
But just
there's one mistake, I think, in the discussion, which thinks the larger car is principally worse than the smaller car. I could put 10 examples on the table where a small car, where you did not invest enough to get the technology to better results on CO2 emissions, can be worse than a family car, which is larger but very efficient. The challenge is not to get the one unit car, which is more or less small and simple, but to get in each segment the technology to results where we are dramatically down. That you have now, for example, take a very large car. You will have now in the market an S-Class of Daimler with 5 liters. which is around 130 grams CO2. The question is, how do we get that technology, which consists of 100 examples, from lightweight to the compulsion to all of that, how do we get that? Honestly, I say that because it's our strengths. One of the strengths of the German industry is to have that technology and the money to implement technologies for reducing CO2 emissions.
But how much, again, reinterpreting that question, which was addressed to China initially, to create a livable and sustainable society, how much is the German automotive industry in Stuttgart, in Wolfsburg, or in Munich, or wherever, how much is that driving this principle now, or are you still being driven by the people who want to buy the cars?
The largest study in the European Union, who has the CO2 champion in the 10 segments, says, and that changed in the last 5 years, I must confess, but we have now in 5 of 10 segments the CO2 champion of the German automotive industry in comparison with all of our competitors. And we have statistically now, so we have larger cars, better results in our statistics of CO2 emissions than any of our importers. And that has to be the strategy for the future. I don't say that we have already done everything. We have to invest hell of a lot of more money and to get the best ideas out of that. But I want to say the chances for the European industry is there. And the European industry is not only a European industry, we represent now 20% of the Chinese market with our Chinese partners. That means what we do in Europe has to be done elsewhere. And one last aspect perhaps, what we are doing in many areas is downsizing the engine. That means where you had before a 12-liter car, you might have now a 6-liter car, which has enough horsepower to satisfy the consumer. And I think this downsizing trend will continue. Relatively large cars still, but with downsized engines, with alternative engines, coming in the next 20, 30, 40 years, much nearer to zero emissions.
Trouble is, large cars don't solve the congestion problem. But let me now move on. Robin, you want to intervene, and I was going to come to you anyway, because you, in many ways, what you're doing with Buzzcar is a metric of how people can change their patterns. So let me ask you to pick up on anything you've heard and also give us the data.
So I have...
And explain what your company does.
I have 2 points, and you're only going down one. But to the answer to the question, what is the best car that should be delivered into China or elsewhere, I'm asked this question all the time, and there is no one best car, which I think was explained. The best car, however, is a shared car, and it's the right car for each trip. Each trip, I get into the right-sized car that fits that location, it fits that specific trip. Am I going with 1 people or 5 people? Am I going to see my boss or going to pick up lumber? The right car for the right trip. When people own their own cars, they get the biggest possible car to do the whole thing. So what we know really needs to happen in these big cities is that people don't own their own cars. They choose the car that fits the trip each and every time. They pay for what they need. As to statistics, we can look at car sharing around the world is showing that for each shared car in a dense urban area, it replaces 15 to 20 cars. And I can see this again and again. In Washington, New York, San Francisco, and Boston, the demand for registered parking in those cities has declined by 8 to 10%. And it exactly mirrors the number of shared cars in those cities. So number one, shared cars satisfy a much larger percent of the population. Number two, because they use fewer cars, each one of those cars they do use requires 3. Each car parked in a city has to have 3 parking spaces. When you take away 1 car, you reduce 3 parking spaces. So you have enormous gains in the amount of parking that is required to satisfy the population. You use many fewer cars to satisfy a population. To China's demand of status, I can speak from experience. People feel very high status in shared cars because they never deal with maintenance. They can drive incredibly fancy cars. People are impressed. They have a different car every day of the week. It is a totally different level of status and ownership. And the last piece that I want to talk about shared cars is that when people pay by the hour, so a fully variable cost, they always choose the right mode of transportation. If I'm going to choose between feet, bike, metro, electric electric bicycle or car, and if I'm paying for that car by the hour, I will only choose the car when it's absolutely the right thing. So what we see again with car sharing is that people reduce their miles traveled by 40 to 80%. And I would posit that shared cars is the fastest path by far to get CO2 reductions immediately. We don't need alternative cars. We just need today's cars, shared, fully variable costs. So that was my mini solution to that question. But I'd like to pick up on the piece that I wanted to say that is different. We have been talking about, we've been tiptoeing around the fact that governments have constrained budgets. And so why can't we get accomplished what we want to get accomplished? Likewise, companies have constrained budgets. I suggest that we need to look outside of the transportation industry entirely for what I see as a really fabulous solution to one piece of what we need. So this is not the all solution, but something that we are not doing at all in the transportation sector that I think we need to do. So if we think of these companies, Google, Wikipedia, Flickr, YouTube, Skype, eBay, Facebook, I'll add ones you might not know, Etsy, Couchsurfing, Phone, and Waze, all of those companies have one thing in common. They're using excess capacity of individuals onto a common platform, and through using excess capacity of individuals on a common platform, they have had phenomenal growth and phenomenal success. So Google, it's sharing Robin Chase's searches. When I type in 2 words, what do I choose as a search term? That is going to fund what does Google choose. Wikipedia, it's my excess capacity of my knowledge. Flickr, my photos. YouTube, my videos. Facebook, my friends. eBay, my stuff. All of these companies are using individuals' things to put on a common platform. So I look, and why is this possible now? Because of the rise of the internet, it's very easy to find very specific, local, tiny pieces of things. Very quickly, you can find them locally and quickly. You can make a transaction that has very low cost. So because of this, the internet has completely broken down the idea that we have to have huge monolithic companies supplying things. So to get to the internet and moving to transportation, the rise of the smartphone means that I have access to the internet every single place I move. I know that everyone in this room has a smartphone. And not only that, I have a geolocalization. So my ability to find what I need immediately is really satisfied by this smartphone technology. So when we go to taking this all together, I think that we can use end users' excess capacity into government or roadway systems. So an example we heard from Enrique Peñalosa yesterday, he famously created something called Ciclovia in Bogota, which was opening up roads, closing them to cars and opening them up Sunday mornings. There was excess road capacity on Sunday mornings. 1.3 million people use those roads now to walk and cycle. So it's excess capacity people brought themselves. The company that I'm doing now is Buzzcar. And if you look at this slide, this is...
Could we have the slide, please?
It's here. Oh, sorry. If we think about car sharing, Zipcar, the largest car sharing company in the world, in 11 years has 560,000 people using 8,000 cars, because each time the Zipcar goes to place a car, it has to think very carefully about its return on investment. This is Buzzcar. It's been live for about 4 weeks. You can see that we have about 1,000 people who have already said that they want to do this, which is to say we can go very, very quickly when we're using other people's stuff. And I think for transportation, we can think of this as collaboratively financed, my individuals, collaboratively constructed a fleet of public vehicles that is done using end users. And I think we can do that with cars, we can do that with bicycles, we can do it with wireless networks. There's this huge range of opportunity out there, and I urge you all to look very closely at your company, your government's excess capacity, and figure out how you can open it up for other people to make use of, and people will do so very, very quickly. Thanks.
Thank you. Could you see in India this kind of model working successfully? After all, you are a very entrepreneurial country at the moment, with an incredible increase in volume of traffic because of new cars.
Well, I must say that prima facie, it appears that we will have to, first of all, try it at level with some private company who offers, instead of taxis, some shared cars, that sort of service. And once we start that, I don't see it working to begin with straight away in societies, but I do see it working in case it starts, first of all, with certain companies starting instead of the individual taxis, some shared cars taxis. And as it works, then gradually maybe people will work themselves into a pool.
But what Robin is saying is that there's an almost explosive interest in this because of those advantages which he's just summarized. Couldn't this be the case as well in a developing country like yourselves?
Well, I'm afraid my experience is that people just now are a bit too individualistic. It has worked in shared cars, in people who are working in same offices. Quite often it doesn't work there also because people have different timings of return, and therefore they would like to return they would like not to be left out because this thing. My experience has been that this quite often has not worked so well.
Well, let's
nail
this with Robin.
Wait, I just think that you're confusing ride sharing and car sharing. And I went very quickly. Ride sharing is people sharing the same trip together in the same car. Car sharing is I go by myself in a car and do my trip. There is no time or any coordination. It's a membership piece. And when I think about car sharing in developing countries, I would say that we want to posit it as the highest status, and the cars are incredibly nice. It's a very beautiful fleet, and then it trickles down. That is a aspirational and high-status car, and that is, in fact, what we see in Zipcar's success, is that we use really beautiful cars. It was not the crummy car next door. It was.
Could you see, in the developing world, we just have to be talking about India, but could you see this as a viable business option, given, again, what we're talking about, livable and sustainable, and this explosive growth of four-wheeled traffic?
I think we will, and I think we will see it actually with drivers. So the car will come with the driver, and we would see that in places like where there's low cost of wages. So it would be the car plus the driver that is shared.
Well, that happens in India a lot of the time anyway,
exactly.
At the moment.
But in a much larger fleet of pools, not just me with my neighbors, but me able to get one any place. So I go shopping at the mall, and then I find which is the closest shared car and come. That it's a much broader. Not just one.
Which prompts the question, your innovation here, does it require bandwidth, essentially? Without bandwidth and connectivity, and you mentioned the smartphone, and there are 17 million new phones a month in India, for example. We're seeing it everywhere across Africa. We've seen what's happened in North Africa in recent weeks. Does it require connectivity for this to stand a chance of working?
It definitely requires connectivity. As to smartphones or not, there's... Traditional car sharing for years has not used smartphones. I think, for me personally, I think that's the wave of the future, and we see that the rise of smartphones is very rapid. In 3 years, most of the populations will be having smartphones.
Matthias.
Yes, you might be surprised, but I support what you say fully. That was not the thinking of the car industry years ago, but today we understand that, especially in the urban areas, densely populated, and especially for younger people, the threshold to use it is lower and lower, and we support it. We do it in Ulm in Germany, Car2Go. We do it in Austin, Texas. We do it in other areas. And I think perhaps first the developed world should start with it and see how the concepts work. Because I understand that in the developing world, ownership of a car is such a critical question of defining yourself that it will need a longer time before people accept it. I would like to have it there as well, but we Europeans should not start to dictate it.
Henry, can you imagine? I'm coming to you in a moment, Jan. Well, just one moment. I'm just trying to clarify. Forgive me. There are time constraints here, and I've got to hear from Jan as well. Henry, do you think this could work in China?
Currently, I think it's not the best practice.
What do you mean by that?
Because in developed country and developing country, the demand is different, and the big issue in terms of credibility, I have to say so, because this shared car, you need to have very good discipline to maintain the car well, and also you have the risk of criminal things against this car sharing, because that's happening, and also I think at this stage it's difficult to implement.
All right. Now, at the back, I do apologize, but what I'm trying to do is get through quite a few things here by 1:15. So please come in, and then I'll go to Jan.
Yes, thank
Thank you very much. I will say at this point that I'm very disappointed that the conversation is geared toward car ownership and car ridership. And no disrespect to the car industry representatives here, but and I'm not sure if you define what livable cities.
Could you just tell us where you come from?
Our societies are. Where I'm from.
What do you represent? Yeah.
I'm speaking out of my own opinion, but I think that in terms of what a livable city is, I mean, I can tell you I work for the World Bank, but I'm not necessarily representing my organization here. When I speak is also out of my own knowledge and research. The point is, I think it would have been useful, and I apologize I came in a little late, but what a livable city is. And I think I would like to hear from this panel what livable society is. I don't think, considering what we know of today in terms of climate change, air pollution, congestion, that advocating a car per person or discussing.
We have been down this track at the beginning.
Okay.
I did. Can I just say I did make that very clear at the beginning. Okay. We were talking about livable and sustainable societies. We've got onto this as part of the transitionary process.
Very good. And that's very fair. And I would like to hear from the panel then how we can integrate other modes and how we can incorporate other users of society. As the work that I do, I see that the majority of people do walk in cities, and the bulk of the growth in urbanization, motorization will happen in cities. This is where we will have the major problems in the future, and I would like to know what kind of concrete solutions are being thought of besides car ownership.
All right, but we've got to be practical. In places like Mumbai, people commute for 2.5 hours from.
Also walk and
yeah, but you can't walk that
cars,
distance.
Cannot afford public transportation.
Okay, sure.
Cannot walk on sidewalks. There are a lot of other problems.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you've been very patient. I need to go to Jan because you've been very patient because I wanted to bring things together so you could reflect from your position in the UN Economic Commission for Europe on the kind of discussion we've had and the view you're taking.
I would say that I partly agree with some of the points made by lady just said about the discussion, because what we were talking about is eventually about car industry, what is happening in different parts of the world. Whether I like it or not, I registered a sort of disconnect. We speak about sustainability, and it's true, and we speak about livable cities, and it's the second part of the community of the panel. That's at least my impression. So again, there is no one model for all. Secondly, indeed, at the very beginning there was a discussion about livability, and it is applicable also to the megapolis in the emerging economies. Definitely already there one must speak about jobs, and it was mentioned here about how to bring employment closer to the places where people are living and vice versa. But all of this, I believe, deserves a certain broader approach to things. Energy was mentioned. It's not only fuel, it's everything. And I believe that one of the solutions will come with energy. What will be the energy source? Affordability, accessibility, production, distribution. And here, whether we like it or not, I think that we must think about, also given the climate change and the pressures that are coming, we must think about more and more about renewable energies and energy efficiency. And renewable energies as such, as dispersed way how to produce energy. And it means bring this kind of energy sources to the communities. Because renewable energy you can produce everywhere. You don't have to have a totally centralized system. You have to have a centralized system of distribution. That's the role of the state. I can speak about energy neutral houses, or houses that will generate energy. And we have such houses, for example. About health-related factors, including related to mobility. And here again, a diversion, the road safety campaign is about that. And it's also about the economic aspect of this. But I will add, and that is the point that I would like to make because it was not mentioned here. I would like to say that we talked, and here many of the discussants, they raised the role of companies. And we heard something about the role of governments. Companies working, governments working. We must think how companies and governments will work together. Because only when companies and governments are working together we can have certain results. Notably, if we look at the future from the perspective of 20, 30, 40 years. This is already happening. It's not only companies themselves that are developing in a certain way, that are bringing new innovative ways. It's also the governments, like EU 2020 strategy, gave a very clear framework for companies as well to develop, to fit in, to find their niches. I believe that, again, regulations of the European Commission, if I would take it like this, not mine, but the Brussels Commission, that would like to phase out the current type of vehicles using the current fuel and move into electric vehicles in a certain period of time. It's maybe providing a sort of straitjacket to industry, but nevertheless providing an orientation. Then the governments must work together to make this at least regional, if not even global. One level down, and here where my commission is playing a certain role, I would say even a lead role, is what we do in the UNEC, in the World Forum for Harmonization of Vehicle Regulations. This is about global technical regulations. This is about norms that are being shared by everyone. Without this, we will not be able to move in the production of cars of future generations, hybrid, etc., etc. But this is just to say who I represent. I didn't want to, and I don't want to speak that much about this. These are just some points. I know that I'm short. I will not go into any further in this, but I think that this element of governance, governments and industry working together and planning together and strategizing together and creating certain norms together that would then be, whether we like it or not, obligatory or accepted voluntarily by industries are very important also for the process of innovation, including innovations like you mentioned in using of vehicles as such. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, let me pick up that point right from the back, the personal view there, that essentially all of you are thinking too conventionally, that you're not thinking radically enough about the challenge, particularly when it comes to four wheels and certainly private cars or corporate cars, that really much more needs to be done differently, including how and when we travel and how transport is provided, and the difficult decisions which have to be taken probably sooner rather than later. Is soft mobility, the kind of thing we've just heard from the back on walking and cycling, is that something that really needs to be pushed much faster in order to create the livable and sustainable society?
Well, I'm afraid we must understand the enormity of challenges in some of these developing countries. When we are talking of cycling, I think we are talking of minuscule things. When we are talking of the accessibility to roads in the 1.5 million habitations, we are talking of people who are 1.5 billion people who are staying in the rural areas and don't even have access to the roads. Where's the question of sustainable living when there is the question of living itself is a danger? So I think we must realize that unless we are able to provide them road and we are able to provide them rail, which is accessible to some of the urban areas where they can have employment, I think really we are not really addressing the question of the main question. The main question is this large population, how are we to be addressed? Are we to say that we are going to emphasize cycling as one of the major issues? In my opinion, no. Second, as far as some of the other issues, second major issue is concerned, apart from this, is the question he raised about the energy question, the broad energy question. We are discussing the energy question not in the broader sense, of course, no doubt about it. The renewable energy is going to be in the long term the most important area where all governments must emphasize and where government and industry have to come together. But we are seeing it in the context of transport, and that's why we discussed the question of how we can use in the transport context all these areas. So I think we have to appreciate the limitation. Otherwise, broadly, the point made is absolutely valid that we have to have renewable energy. But
or not think so conventionally.
I think that the question is that unless you have done certain basic things to talk of innovation, when you haven't done the basic things, I think doesn't really make to me much sense.
Right, Peter Vosa.
I think we are underestimating the challenge to keep the planet going and at the same time actually develop new things. And I think we are also underestimating the right we have to give the developing world to actually increase their living standards. And the living standards is not just a livable city, it's actually basics. And the basics we have to provide first that they can live. And this starts with poor people, hungry people, having a roof over their head, etc. And I think, let's be clear, the energy system, and I think I agree with most of the points, but I think we discussed the energy system at the beginning. Everything needs to be developed. And I would reiterate my point, and a little bit against what you say. I see and feel the straitjacket at the moment, but the straitjacket will also starve innovation. Let's just not forget that. Because you are picking, as I said, the winners and the losers. And that's not what normally industry has done well.
Anyone else? Robin? I want to get 2 or 3 other views as well, and we have about 10 minutes to go.
I don't see that it starves innovation at all. We know that for centuries, business follows tax and government guidelines. That's why we have 2 or 3-story buildings. That's why we have tall ones versus short ones. I mean, it's an endless reaction of business to government's straitjackets. Should they be choosing specific fuels or specific technologies? No. But should they be putting a price on CO2? Absolutely. And then just one quickly to the comment back there about multimodal cities and livable cities. In the developed world, the rich world, I think car sharing is the transitional path that gets individuals to think about their needs for other modes. So I think the more people move to car sharing, they're thinking, I want to have that pedestrian, walkable, bikeable community because now I realize how much it costs to use a car.
Do you have evidence of that, Robin? Because by what she said, you're still thinking about 4 wheels.
No, I'm thinking incessantly about the transitional path, and when you go from owning a car and getting it for every single thing you do versus thinking, I'm going to get in that car and it's going to cost me $10 an hour, or I'm going to do something else. And I sold my car. 40% of people sold or didn't buy a car, so you put them out of the car ownership community into the pool of people who are not primary car owners. So I see car sharing as a very important transitional path.
Right. Martin.
I think if we want to create a livable and sustainable society, we have to figure 2 certain points. We have heard the technical side, that's the industry, we need innovation. I think this point is clear. We also have to look at the operational side, to the provider of the transport services. We talked about to strengthen the public transport, to support the public transport system, to provide attractive offers to the people, and so on and so on. We also talked about bicycle roads, about initiative to support cycling, walking, and other initiatives. I remember some panels here yesterday. That's also clear. But we also have to look at the political side, to the governments, and we have to be willing to go another way. And that's one of the critical points. Peter Vosa said that the politics, they are only thinking in 2 years, in 3 years, and in 4 years. And we just figured out this point in our government and said, no, we don't think only for 4 years. We go up to a 10 or to a 15-year plan. That's our action plan.
But are you, as an elected politician, faced with a more than doubling of the size of your community and of Liechtenstein, judging by the figures you gave us right at the beginning, are you prepared to make that kind of enormous transitional leap to tell people they can't have 4 wheels anymore because actually Liechtenstein will never be the same again?
We have to.
Have you already?
Yes, we are talking today about car sharing.
Is it a vote winner?
Yes, we have to.
It's a vote winner? It wins you votes, does it, at the moment?
No, it doesn't. But it's for our children. I mean, I myself, I have some children, and I want that they have a livable and sustainable place to live. And one last point, we have to change the personal behavior of everyone in the society. And that's the main focus of the politics.
You think you as a politician can change personal behavior?
No, but we can try to convince the people.
Matthias.
Honestly, Nick, I share many of these views, but one thing in this discussion is underrated. That is technology. In all of these areas where we talk, solutions will come through implementation of modern technologies, whether it's the energy efficient house, whether it's the renewable energy, whether it's the combination and connectivity of systems, of transport systems, whether it's the best logistics, whether it's telematic systems, whether it's the best zero emission car. Without the most developed innovation and technology systems, we will not solve the problems of the planet. I think sometimes we have this nice little niche in our head, which is so cozy. But we have to be prepared that in a few decades we will have 9 billion people on the planet. And most of these solutions are through investments in the technologies which can serve. And if we are not, and that's a question for politics, as it is a question for industry, are we capable to cut everything, but not the blood which gets up to our head, which means research and development, which is for universities, which is for the institutes, which is for industry and for government. And honestly, my concern is sometimes companies are too much quarterly oriented. Very often governments are too often election related. And do we have this sustainable strategy which invests heavily and much more than today in the technologies which we need to solve many parts of our problem?
And what happens when you tell the member companies of your federation that they're too quarterly profit orientated and should be thinking longer term?
You know, when we were in the deepest crisis, Nick, in 2008 winter, when we had the 20 most important people of our industry together, from Bosch, supplier, to Mercedes and Volkswagen and others, we gave us the promise, and I was not sure whether we could keep it. We cut everything but not research and development. 2 years later, I can say we are at the moment the only automotive industry in the world which did that. And now we start to profit from it. Perhaps we have one privilege. Many of our companies are family-owned or foundations. That means they have a structure which allows them to look over the quarterly narrow-minded view. Not all, but many. And that helps us. And we have to, all industries, I think, whether they are quarterly oriented or not, whether are at the stock market or not, they have to learn that without a long-term sustainable strategy, you will not get the technologies needed, which guarantees you the profit in 5, 6, 10, 12 years.
Jan Kubis, and then Professor Wang, and then Tony May.
Very similar approach on the side of the government. So I was working in the government of my country only some 2.5 years ago when indeed the EU adopted 2020 strategy. My government was not necessarily that happy, but there was sort of vision and peer pressure because we were working together with the European Union and we listened also to the industries. That's why I said about partnership. Partnership is very important. Yes, maybe we establish certain framework how to move forward as the European Union. Now it's percolated to the work of UNEC on technical regulations, global technical regulations, but also why you can be leaders in certain areas as far as CO2 emissions, etc. Because there is a vision. There is a vision established in this partnership between governments, not only one government, got governments and industries. Also, it's not only automotive industry. Thank you.
Professor Wang.
Hello, my name is Ki-yeon Hwang from South Korea, Korea Transport Institute, called KODI. And we have really still ailment generated during our development era for the last 2 or 3 decades. And we covered up the streams and the rivers to provide a road system for at least livability of the poor people. And what's the outcome of this? And covering up the streams and covering up the rivers, and that doesn't really lead to a sustainable society. And so now we are in a stage to really demolishing covered the road system again. So because why we are attracted to this covering up the streams? Because we are very short of money. The easiest way to provide the road system is using public land. Most of the stream is occupied, owned by the public, so it's free. So they use the space for providing the road systems. I just want to know maybe how you, when you provide the road system in India, have you ever thought about just using this cheap land, which is very valuable for sustainability, as misused?
Professor, I'll ask them to just hold that question. Tony May, could you just come in? We're at the end of our time, but I'm just going to keep pushing it.
Thank you. I wanted to come back to this question of livability and what we mean by it, and whether we're getting towards it. And it seems to me that the key word in livability is local. Local access, local community involvement, local interaction, local involvement of all sectors in society, local improved environments. And for me, the major barrier to that in developed cities and in developing cities is the growth in journey lengths and the growth in urban sprawl. And I've heard very little this afternoon which is a way of tackling those two problems. And in a way, Dr. Huang's last intervention is the closest we've got to where you actually turn the roads over to the local community and local parks instead. But I'd be very interested to hear from the panel whether the technologies or the policies that they're talking about will actually address that key issue.
And in response to that question from the back about more walking, but don't give up the microphone, given what you've just said, more walking, but given what you've also written as well about the longer journeys that people are having to make, do you see that as an option?
Well, if people make shorter journeys, then they can walk and they can cycle. And Henry Lee was saying, well, people are not going to cycle on battery cycles for 30 or 40 kilometers across cities. Of course they're not. But if we can develop built forms that allow them to work, to shop, to interact locally, then that becomes possible.
Thank you.
So it's a contributor.
Pass the microphone just back to your right. To your right, Tony. Just there. Just one more comment, please.
Ajit Gupte. I'm the Deputy Chief of Mission at the Indian Embassy in Berlin. A couple of comments. Firstly, the perception that India is a society with an insatiable demand for cars. I'd like to point out that we are largely reliant on two-wheelers, scooters, motorcycles, and our own version of the electric bike. The production of two-wheelers is 10 times more than the production of cars. And even now, if you leave apart the Tier 1 cities, in most of the other cities, it is predominantly two-wheelers. So in that sense, although the demand for cars is growing, we are still reliant to a large extent on two-wheelers, and we have these three-wheelers, tuk-tuks, or auto rickshaws, as we call it. The second point, cost of fuel in India in proportion to income is still very high. Even for established middle classes in the big cities, maintaining a car takes up to about 20 to 25% of your monthly income. So Indians would be very welcome to any measures to reduce their fuel costs. And the idea of sharing of vehicles is an excellent idea. In some primitive forms, it is being followed in India. I mean, even as a youngster, I've used sharing of taxis, sharing of vehicles. So this is something which can be developed very well.
Right, we're overrunning, but just pick up the points which you've heard. Robin, please.
Just a very quick comment on livability. As I'm listening, my one thought is, can we think of a metric that has two components? One is density of population per kilometer, per 5 kilometers, and the other is the percent of residents and jobs in that kilometer. So that if you were light on one, your job was to get it the other, so that there is a balance between jobs and residential, and then, of course, a certain desired density.
That particular point, PK.
You know, the roads which are being built here are being built by local communities. The point he made about the local village panchayats, they are the ones who are building up the roads. They are the ones who are deciding from where it will go. A lot of it goes, some of it goes through their personal lands, some of it goes through through the government lands. But it is their decision. In certain cases, the government also has offered money for the private landowners in case they have said that we have a shortage of land. In certain very sporadic cases, we have offered that as well. But the whole program is based on large number of villages being connected under a project where the land is being chosen and the alignment is being chosen by the village communities.
Thank you. Peter, Matthias or Henry, do you want a final comment, particularly whether we've really been revolutionary and innovative enough? Henry.
So I think people always tend to think about something never thought about, or never seen. But I think we ignore something right available and very effective methods. That's also a revolution. Just we need to change our mindset and take what is available today and implement it. We have to take actions. We need to action, not only talking for futuristic ideas. We need to take actions. That's what I have seen in China that's happening. The government has to take actions also. They are not just trying to play around. They need to make decisions to guide people what direction we should go. So that people and industry has to work together. We provide technology solutions, and they make judgments and make the decisions. The leader, they make necessary support and make the guidance to the industry. I think that's important.
Thank you. Well, even if there have been some frustrations about how revolutionary or innovative we have been, thank you very much indeed. I hope we have pushed the mindsets a little bit further than some were expecting. Thank you. And tomorrow we are going to be looking at better transport and better communities, achieving sustainable urban mobility, how decision makers really have to confront this, picking up what I pressed Martin on the problem of the politicians and how far they're prepared to go. Thank you very much indeed.